When I first crossed paths with Mia, she was like a live wire. She didn't just stroll into a place, she owned it, like she was the main act and everyone else was just there to watch. Her laughter could halt strangers' chats in their tracks, and her quick, clever comebacks left folks tripping over their words to match her pace. She wasn't only gorgeous, she had this pull, like a magnet, reeling people in without her even noticing. I wasn't any different, caught up in her spell. Heck, I was probably her #1 admirer, totally hooked on the spark she added to my world. Tying the knot with her felt like I'd locked in my happy ending. I pictured us as this unbeatable team, me, the calm, grounded one, and her, this unstoppable burst of energy. For a while, it clicked perfectly. Our opposite traits meshed, smoothing out each other's rough edges. But somewhere down the line, that harmony started to wobble. At the start, I didn't spot the warning signs. They were sneaky, easy to shrug off as no big deal. Mia always had a flirty side, but it seemed innocent, just part of the charm that made her, well, Mia. She could strike up a lively chat with anybody, and I used to love that about her, how she'd light up any conversation. But after a while, that innocence started feeling less harmless. It began with small stuff, a glance at a waiter that lingered a bit too long during dinner, or a chuckle at some guy's joke that sounded a little too eager. On their own, those moments were nothing, but piled up, they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. I still remember the first time I brought it up. We were at this party, and I noticed Mia in what seemed like a cozy, private exchange with some dude I'd never seen before. They weren't touching or anything, but the way she tilted her head, leaning in close while they talked, it twisted my gut something fierce. "Mia," I said later that night when we were by ourselves, "what was going on back there?" She stared at me like I was sprouting nonsense. "Going on with what?" "You and that guy," I pressed. It felt, I don't know, like you two were awfully tight. She just rolled her eyes, her voice dripping with dismissal. "Oh, come on, don't be absurd. He's just a buddy." "Just a buddy," became her standard line whenever I raised the issue, whenever her actions left me feeling like I was vying for a piece of her focus. She'd brush it off with a laugh, tossing out accusations that I was jealous or too unsure of myself, and every time, I'd cave, thinking maybe I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But those doubts didn't just vanish. They stuck around, eating at me in the quiet moments, getting louder with every little flirty gesture, every time she waved me off, every instance I felt like I wasn't measuring up in her eyes. The real kicker wasn't even the flirting, it was how Mia dealt with it, acting like it was my issue to fix, not hers. She'd chuckle at my worries, spinning them into jabs at my expense. "Oh, Noah, you're so touchy," she'd say with a head shake. "It's kind of adorable, honestly." Adorable? That word stung like a backhand. My unease wasn't some cute quirk, it was raw, real, and it was chipping away at the core of our marriage. No matter how many times I tried to lay it out for her, she never seemed to give it any weight. As time went on, I started questioning myself. Was I being too soft, too paranoid? Maybe Mia was right, and this was just her nature, a free spirit who fed off social connections. But if that was the case, where did that leave me in the picture? I didn't want to be the guy who hovered over his wife, dictating who she could chat with or how she acted. That's not the kind of marriage I signed up for. But I also didn't want to feel like a footnote in our relationship, always scrapping for bits of her attention while she poured her best energy into everyone else. About a year into wrestling with these doubts, everything came to a head. We were at one of those fancy, over-the-top shindigs Mia couldn't get enough of, all glitz and glamour. She was totally in her zone, chatting up everyone with ease, while I lingered in the shadows, clutching my drink and trying to fade into the wallpaper. Then I caught it, Mia, across the room, cracking up at something some guy was saying. I didn't know him from Adam, but that wasn't the point. The way she gazed at him, like he was the most fascinating guy on the planet, giving him a piece of her I hadn't felt in ages, it hit me hard. Something inside me broke, not with rage, but with this heavy, sinking acceptance. This wasn't a one-off, and it wasn't going to stop. Mia thrived on the spotlight, the ego boost, the rush of being desired, and no matter how much I cared for her, I couldn't keep up with that. On the drive home that night, I made one final attempt to get through to her. "Mia," I said, my voice calm but weighed down with emotion, "can't you see what this is doing to us?" She shot me a puzzled look. "What are you going on about? You don't think I see how you act with other guys?" I pressed on. "The way you come alive for them, like I'm invisible." For a second, she went quiet. Then, with a smug little grin, she said, "Oh, Noah, you're just making stuff up." Making stuff up. That's when it hit me, Mia wasn't going to change, because she didn't see a problem. To her, this was all my issue, something for me to sort out, not her. I didn't say another word that night. There was nothing more to say. Deep down, I knew our marriage was barely holding together, and I wasn't the one about to cut the final thread. I should have seen the night was doomed from the second we showed up. The place was one of those ritzy hotels, with chandeliers that probably cost more than my first car and my old pickup combined. Mia, naturally, looked like $1,000,000. She was rocking this emerald green dress that fit her like a glove, her hair done up in that perfect, "oh, this old thing," style that took hours to nail. She was glowing, and she knew it, soaking up the attention. Me. I felt like a sidekick, just there to round out her picture-perfect scene. When we walked in, Mia lit up, scanning the crowd like she was picking out her next big fan. I stuck by her at first, shaking hands and swapping small talk with folks I barely recognized, but soon enough, Mia was off, doing her thing. That's how it always went at these events. She'd work the room like a pro, and I'd hang back, trying to chat with some guy who looked as bored as I felt. But that night, something felt off. There was this quiet tension buzzing around, and it didn't take long to figure out why. It was this guy. I didn't know him, but that wasn't what mattered. He was tall, dressed sharp, with that cocky vibe of someone who's never been told no in his life. I spotted him by the bar, leaning casually against the counter, drink in hand, eyeing the room like he was picking his next target. Then his gaze locked on Mia. She clocked him right away, her lips curling into a subtle smile as she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm not sure she even knew she did it. It was one of those little moves she had, practically shouting, "Look at me." And man, did he look. At first, I tried to let it slide. Maybe it was no big deal. Maybe I was blowing it out of proportion. But as the night dragged on, I couldn't shake this sinking feeling, like I was watching something play out right in front of me, something I couldn't stop. I stood by one of those tall cocktail tables, nursing my drink, keeping tabs on Mia as she charmed the crowd. She was in her element, laughing and waving her hands as she talked, but every now and then, her eyes would flick back to the guy at the bar. He wasn't just glancing her way, he was sizing her up, like she was some mystery he was dying to crack. When that guy finally decided to make his play, it was like watching a movie in slow motion. I saw him stride toward Mia, his cocky swagger parting the crowd like he owned the place. Mia turned to him, her face glowing in a way that knotted my stomach tight. They swapped a few words, and then she let out this laugh, a rich, heartfelt one I hadn't heard in forever, all for him. I gritted my teeth, trying to hold it together. It's not like she was crossing any obvious lines, they weren't touching, and to someone far off, it might have looked like just friendly chatter. But I knew Mia inside and out. I could read the way her head tilted, the spark in her eyes when she felt truly noticed, and right then, she was showing him a side of herself I hadn't seen in years. Finally, I'd had enough. I walked over, forcing my steps to stay steady and my face to look calm, even though my insides were churning. Mia spotted me coming and flashed a smile, but it didn't quite touch her eyes. "Hey, Noah, there you are," she said, her voice all bright and bubbly, like everything was fine and dandy. "This is Mason. He's in PR." Mason turned my way, offering a handshake. "Noah," he said, smooth as silk, "you've got one heck of a wife." She's been filling me in on your business projects, pretty impressive stuff. I shook his hand, but it felt empty, like shaking hands with a ghost. Appreciate it, I muttered, my tone flat as a board. The three of us stood there for a beat, caught in this weird, tense standoff, until Mia piped up. Mason was just telling me he's got some killer ideas for growing your client list, she said, her voice brimming with excitement, like she was pitching a deal. You guys should totally chat. I plastered on a tight smile. Maybe another time. I was actually hoping to pull you aside for a minute, Mia. We haven't had a chance to talk all night. Her smile flickered for a split second, but she bounced back fast. Sure thing, she said, grazing my arm with her hand. Catch you later, Mason. As we stepped away, I leaned in close, keeping my voice hushed. You think I didn't notice you staring at him from across the room? She froze, then spun to face me, a smirk curling her lips that made my blood simmer. Well, keep your eyes peeled, she said, her tone cool but laced with a bold edge, 'cause I'm about to put on a performance for him. I just gaped at her, floored. I'd braced for her to dodge or dismiss it like always, but this? This was a new kind of nerve, and it stung like a punch to the face. I leaned closer, my voice icy but firm. Well, I'm about to serve you a dose of reality. I'm out of here before the band packs up. Her smirk wobbled, just for a moment, but she brushed it off quick. Oh, come on, she laughed, waving me off like she always did. You're not going anywhere. But this time, she was dead wrong. For the rest of the night, I hung back, watching Mia glide through the crowd like nothing had gone down. She was dazzling, charismatic, pulling everyone in like she always did, but to me, she was a stranger, someone I didn't know anymore, someone I was done fighting for. By the time the party wrapped up, I'd made my call. The wake-up call wasn't for Mia, it was for me. I couldn't keep kidding myself that we could patch this up or that Mia was ever going to be who I needed her to be. As we left the party and headed to the car, neither of us said a word, but a strange calm settled over me. I knew what I had to do, and for the first time in ages, I wasn't scared to follow through. When we got home, the silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mia spent the whole drive glued to her phone, acting like our fight never happened, like we hadn't just traded words that cracked our marriage wide open. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my head spinning with all the things I'd kept bottled up for way too long. As we stepped into the house, Mia slipped off her heels and headed straight for the kitchen, grabbing a bottle of wine and pouring a glass like it was just another evening. I stood in the doorway, watching her, half hoping she'd say something, anything, to address the mess we'd stirred up at the party, but she didn't even glance my way. Instead, she propped herself against the counter, lazily swirling her wine and thumbing through her phone, acting like the world was all sunshine and roses. I lingered there for a second, a wave of disbelief crashing over me. Was this really how it was? Did she care so little about our marriage, about me? Part of me was itching to shout, to demand she explain herself, to make her own up to what she'd been doing. But another part, the one worn out from years of trying to keep us from falling apart, just wanted to turn and leave. You don't even care, do you? I finally said, my voice steady but carrying the weight of everything I felt. She flicked her eyes up at me, her face blank, unreadable. Care about what? She replied, sounding bored, like I was wasting her time. About us, Mia. About how you've been tearing this marriage apart. About the way you've been treating me. Mia let out a sigh, setting her glass on the counter with a soft clink. Noah, you're being so dramatic, as usual. I chatted with a guy at a party, big whoop. It's not just the party, I said, stepping into the kitchen, my voice firm. It's everything, the flirting, the way you brush me off, how you make me feel like I'm barely on your radar when I'm supposed to be your husband. She rolled her eyes, like I was reciting a tired script. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Why can't you just drop it? Because I'm through dropping it, I shot back, my voice spiking for the first time that night, sharp with frustration. I've let it slide 100 times, Mia. I've looked the other way when you flirt with other guys, choked down my pride every time you made me feel like nothing. I've been patient, tried talking, tried making this work, but you don't give a damn. You never have. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I caught a spark of defensiveness in her. That's not fair, she said, folding her arms tight. I've done plenty for this marriage, Noah. Like what, exactly? I asked, my voice quieter now but still burning with intensity. Tell me, Mia, what have you done? 'Cause from where I'm standing, all you've done is take my time, my effort, my love, and given me nothing back. She opened her mouth to fire back but clamped it shut, her face hardening like a wall going up. You know what, Noah? Maybe we never should have gotten married. Maybe we're just not meant for each other. Her words slammed into me like a fist, but instead of shattering me, they locked something into place inside. She wasn't going to change, wasn't going to fight for what we had. And I was done pouring my heart into someone who couldn't even admit we had a problem. You might be right, I said, my voice cold but unshaken. Maybe this was a mistake. But here's the thing, it's not one I'm gonna keep repeating. I turned and headed for the bedroom, leaving Mia standing there in the kitchen. My hands were trembling as I yanked a duffel bag from the closet and started tossing stuff in. I didn't pack much, just the basics, some clothes, toothbrush, a couple of things that mattered to me. Everything else could stay, it didn't mean anything anymore. Mia appeared in the doorway, arms still crossed, her tone sharp. What are you doing, Noah? I'm leaving, I said plainly, not even glancing her way. I told you at the party, Mia, I'm done. You can put on your show for whoever you want, but I won't be in the audience. She let out a laugh, but it was thin, empty. You're not for real. I zipped the bag shut, slung it over my shoulder, and finally faced her. I've never been more for real in my life. For a moment, she just stared, like she couldn't wrap her head around it. Then her face shifted, a hint of panic creeping in. Noah, come on, you're blowing this way out of proportion. This is crazy. No, I said, brushing past her toward the front door. What's crazy is how long I stuck around, hoping you'd change. But you won't, Mia. You just won't. I didn't stick around for Mia to fire back. I strode out the front door, letting it shut behind me with a thud that felt like a heavy load sliding off my shoulders. As I climbed into my car and peeled out, I wasn't raging or crying, just wrapped in this odd, bittersweet calm. I was through being her cheerleader, her fallback, her second thought. For the first time in what felt like forever, I tasted freedom. That night, as I left, I made up my mind, no more back and forth, no more pleading, no more trying to open her eyes to what she refused to see. Mia had a knack for flipping conversations, turning my real worries into claims that I was too sensitive or blowing things out of proportion. But not this time. I wasn't giving her the chance to pull that trick again. Her texts started flooding in almost right away. The first one popped up just as I rolled into the hotel parking lot where I'd grabbed a room. Noah, come on, where are you? Get back here so we can sort this out. I didn't bother replying. There was nothing left to hash out, and frankly, I didn't trust myself to keep cool if I tried. I switched off my phone, chucked it onto the hotel desk, and flopped onto the bed, a mix of bone-deep tiredness and relief washing over me. Come morning, when I powered my phone back on, it went nuts with notifications. Her messages swung from irritated to begging to flat-out pissed. You're acting like a kid. I didn't do anything wrong, and you're turning this into some big drama. Noah, quit ghosting me. We need to talk. I still didn't bite. Every text she sent just cemented my choice to walk away. She wasn't saying sorry or owning up to anything, she was just scrambling to take charge of a situation she thought she could twist, same as always. By day 3, her messages took a different turn. The defiance and snark melted into something more desperate. Noah, I'm sorry, alright? Can we just talk? I swear I'll hear you out this time. That word, "here," might have held weight a few months back, but now it rang empty, like a promise she'd never keep. Mia had countless chances to listen before, to see how her actions cut me, to show she gave a damn about our marriage. She didn't take them, and now it was too late for apologies. As the days dragged on, her texts came less often but hit harder emotionally. "I miss you, Noah. Don't do this. We can make this right, I know we can." I didn't get the smug satisfaction I thought I might. Her words didn't hurt like they used to, but they didn't tie things up neatly either. If anything, they left me feeling a quiet sadness, not for myself, but for what we'd thrown away, for the life we might have had if she'd cared enough to try before it all crumbled. Word about Mia's reaction started trickling in through buddies we both knew. One of them, Steven, gave me a call out of nowhere. "Hey, Noah," he said, his voice careful, like he was stepping on eggshells. "I bumped into Mia the other day. She filled me in on what went down." "Oh, yeah," I said, my tone flat, not giving much away. "Yeah, she's not doing so hot. Says she's got no clue why you bailed, like it came out of left field." I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Left field? Seriously?" "That's how she's playing it," Steven admitted, "like you just up and left without a hint." But I told her, "Man, Noah's been wrestling with this for ages." She wasn't having it, though. "Figures," I said, shaking my head. "Mia's a pro at dodging the truth when it doesn't suit her." Steven paused, like he was picking his words carefully. "I'm not saying you should go back or nothing, but maybe just have a word with her. Give her some kind of closure." "Closure?" I echoed, half laughing in disbelief. "Steven, I spent years trying to talk, trying to fix what was broken, begging her to take it seriously. She didn't care back then, so why should I buy that she cares now?" Steven didn't have a comeback for that, and truth be told, neither did I. Over the next couple of weeks, Mia's texts dwindled to a slow drip. Every now and then, one would land late at night, raw and heavy with remorse, like she'd poured her heart out without a filter. "I don't get how we ended up like this. I miss what we had. I'm so sorry." But by that point, her words felt like too little, too late. Her apologies seemed more about easing her own guilt than fixing what she'd broken between us. I didn't block her number, didn't need to. Ignoring her wasn't about getting back at her, it was about shielding myself. Each time she reached out, it was like she was tugging at a rope I'd finally cut loose. I wasn't about to let her drag me back into that mess. One evening, I was out on the balcony of my new place, staring at the city lights twinkling below. My phone buzzed on the table, and for a split second, I thought about answering. But when Mia's name flashed on the screen, I just let out a sigh and let it roll to voicemail. I didn't need to hear her voice to guess what she'd say. Same old excuses, same tired promises, same hollow words that had strung me along for way too long. I wasn't that guy anymore, the one who'd wait for her to turn things around. It was time to start working on me instead. Those first weeks after walking out were a weird mix of liberation and uncertainty. On one side, I felt lighter, like a huge burden had been lifted. I didn't have to deal with Mia's brush-offs or that constant sting of feeling like I was never enough. On the other, I was staring into this big, empty unknown. For years, my world had spun around our marriage, fighting to hold it together, to make it work. Now, for the first time, I had to figure out who I was without her in the picture. I settled into a little apartment downtown. It wasn't fancy, just a one-bedroom with plain furniture and a view of the parking lot, but it was mine. No shared spaces, no traces of Mia lurking in every corner, no heavy tension hanging in the air. It was a fresh start, and I took my time unpacking, setting things up just how I wanted, finding a quiet kind of joy in keeping it simple. Work turned into my safe haven. I threw myself into my projects, staying late at the office, tackling tasks I'd dodged for months. Sure, part of it was dodging the hurt, I won't pretend it wasn't, but mostly, it was about taking back control, showing myself I could stand on my own 2 feet. My coworkers picked up on the shift. "You're different these days," one of them said over lunch, eyeing me curiously. "Like, sharper?" I just gave a nod. "Guess I've got less weighing me down now." Beyond the office, I started reaching out to buddies I hadn't seen in forever. Mia's social tornado had always hogged the spotlight, and I'd let my own friendship slip into the background over time. Now, I was making calls, grabbing coffee or a cold one with old pals, reconnecting with folks who'd been there all along, even when I'd been too caught up to notice. One of those guys, Thomas, talked me into a weekend hike. "You gotta get out of the city, man," he said. "Clear your mind. It'll do you good." I wasn't big on the outdoors, but I went along, and dang, was he right. Standing on a cliff, gazing out at endless stretches of wild land, I felt something I hadn't in years: calm. The chaos in my head faded, replaced by the whisper of the wind and the rustle of leaves. It hit me that the world was so much bigger than my troubles, that life kept moving no matter how bad we screwed things up. That hike flipped a switch in me. I started carving out time for myself in ways I'd never bothered with before. I picked up running, finding comfort in the steady thud of my shoes on the pavement and the burn in my legs. I signed up for a cooking class, learning to whip up real meals instead of leaning on takeout. I even got back into reading, diving into novels that weren't about work or fixing myself, just stories that let me escape and reminded me how much I used to love getting lost in a good book. As I was getting my bearings, Mia's world seemed to be coming apart at the seams. I wasn't out there digging for news, but it found me anyway, trickling in through hushed chats with shared friends and the odd social media post that popped up on my feed. "She's not holding up too well," Stephen said one morning while we grabbed coffee. "Saw her at a party last weekend, and it was rough. That spark she used to have, the way she'd own a room. It's gone." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me felt a grim sort of validation: Mia was finally reaping what she'd sown, but another part, the one that still held memories of the woman I once loved, ached with a quiet sorrow. It wasn't exactly pity, but it was close. The updates kept rolling in. Mia had doubled down on the party scene, diving in harder than ever, but it wasn't landing the way it used to. That magnetic charm that once had everyone hanging on her every word was starting to fade. Friends who'd once been spellbound by her were getting fed up with the constant drama, her endless craving for the spotlight. Without me there to clean up her messes or be the steady hand she'd always leaned on, her life was spinning out of control. Then there were her texts. They showed up less often now, but when they did, they hit like a gut punch, raw and dripping with desperation. "I don't know how to live without you, Noah. Everything's off. I miss us. Please, just talk to me." I never wrote back, not because I was heartless, I'd cared so much it nearly wrecked me, but because I knew hashing it out wouldn't do either of us any good. Mia had to face her own truth, just like I'd had to face mine. She needed to learn that some bridges, once you torch them, can't be patched up. One afternoon, one of her close friends called me up. "Noah, I hate to bug you," she said, her voice hesitant, "but Mia's really falling apart. She's not herself. Maybe if you just reached out, it could help." "I appreciate you letting me know," I replied, keeping my voice even and calm, "but I don't think talking to her will fix what's broken. She's gotta sort this out on her own." The friend let out a sigh, disappointed but not shocked. "I hear you. I just figured you should know." Truth is, hearing about Mia's downward spiral didn't give me any kind of thrill. It didn't wrap things up neatly for me either. It just brought home how far we drifted apart, how much we both lost along the way. But it also drove home a lesson I'd been grappling with since I walked out: I couldn't be her savior. I couldn't put her back together. All I could do was look after myself and hope that someday she'd find a way to do the same. That night, as I sat in my apartment gazing out at the city's glowing skyline, it hit me: Mia's mess wasn't my problem anymore. It wasn't on me to catch her when she stumbled. My job was to focus on me, on the life I was piecing back together, on the man I was turning into. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like more than enough.